Rick Hall, and welcome to Meet the People. Today, we're going to be meeting Mr. Jim Polly. Jim, how are you doing today?
Doing great.
Hey,
Thank you.
fantastic. Glad to hear that, and I want you to know I really appreciate you being on the show. I know you had to drive all the way over here from Jenkins, so early in the morning when we're taping this. But what we wanted to talk about, Jim, is you're chairman of the Old Jenkins School Committee. Could you tell the folks a little bit about what that is?
Okay, sure. The Old Jenkins High School Renovation Committee is a group that actually started in 1992 with a group of former teachers and people who just loved the old school building. And it had fallen into a state of disrepair. It was really looking bad. Windows broken out, cornice work falling down on the ground, a lot of water in the school. And they got together and started talking to the county, the fiscal court of Fletcher County, about what they could do to help restore this building. So as the years have gone on, the group has kind of grown. We've actually started, we're about 1/3 way through of the renovation on the school at this point. We got a long way to go, but things are starting to pick up quite a bit now as we've actually got some things done. So,
well, let's go ahead and let's just start. First of all, we're talking about the Old Jenkins School building.
Mm-hmm.
This building is located in Letcher County in Jenkins.
Right.
And now there's 3 sections of the school. Tell us when each one of those sections was built.
Okay, now the main section, which you'll see, the middle part of the school, the main section was built in 1912. It's one of the original buildings in Jenkins. Between that and the Methodist Church are like the 2 oldest buildings left in the city of Jenkins right now, still standing. Then we have the western end of the building was built in 1924. And then the last building was built, which is where the gymnasium and everything is, was built in 1936. The gymnasium was added actually later, but the bottom part of the building was built in 1936. And so we have, like every 12 years, they had an addition to the school from the time that it was first built until they had finished the building as way it looks today.
So when you're talking about the city of Jenkins, it was a planned city by the coal company. 1912 is when the first part of the school was done, and I would say that's probably about right when Jenkins became a city, quote unquote.
Right, when it was officially declared a city or township by the state government.
What were some of the building materials that they used back in 1912 and 24 and 36 to build the school?
Well, the first and the most noticeable thing, of course, is the stonework on the outside. The limestone foundation, limestone base, and brick, all of which was gotten right there in Jenkins. The bricks were made on Brickyard Hill in Jenkins. The stone was quarried on the mountain, on Pine Mountain, just up above. You can see the road's taken most of the quarry now, but you can still see remnants of the old quarry in one part of the Highway 23 as you go over Pine Mountain into Virginia. And all the base, the limestone, was brought from that quarry down and chiseled by Italian stonemasons who had come in just to do the stonework in this area. You see a lot of it in Jenkins and in Whitesburg and surrounding areas where the stonemasons had come in and hand-carved, chiseled these beautiful stone blocks.
Goodness gracious.
Then, of course, the interior woods, the whole thing, the framework is done with oak, which is something you don't see anymore. Everybody builds with pine nowadays, but it's all solid oak, hard as a rock. Some of the walls actually had, for wainscoting, they had what was called pre-wormy chestnut, which is something that you cannot buy anymore unless it's taken out of an older building, because the chestnut tree suffered a blight, which killed like 98% of the chestnut trees, and there's like 2 left in Lily Cornett Woods. And those are the only 2 anywhere in the region that are still living and that are of timber quality.
It wouldn't be fair to cut those down.
No, those are protected. Fortunately, those are protected, so
Right.
they're there for future generations to see. But these are some of the materials that are inside the school, and it's amazing when you see what it was built from, at that time, because the timbers are just huge compared with today's standards. A 2x4 back in 1912 was 2 inches by 4 inches. 1.5 by 3.5 as it is today, and so the scale of everything is so much bigger than it is now.
Okay, so we have this school now. When was approximately the last year this school was used with students in it? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, in 1972 was the year that we moved all the classes from the old school building to what we call the new school building, which I'm sure anyone who's been in the Jenkins area is familiar with the new school where
Right.
it sits up there. And in 1972, I was actually in the 5th grade, and it was in the old school when we moved from the old building to the new building. And so I have the designation of being the last official class that was in that old school building, other than the Head Start, which was there for several years after.
So is that what happened to the building? Your class just did so much damage?
Now, that's what some people say, but that's not really.
Okay.
Well,
Well, on a more serious note, so 72 is the last time that it's used by the students. Now, was it used by the school board after that?
Yes.
Or?
No, I'm sorry. It was used by the school board as central school offices for several years until, unfortunately, the roof was started leaking and some water damage occurred, and it got to the point to where it was just really too bad to be able to keep any offices or any electronic equipment or anything in that old building. And so the school board moved to where they are now, which is still on Main Street in Jenkins, but it's the office building next to the Hardee's restaurant.
So in the 70s, the school was starting to deteriorate, and it deteriorated, I understand, until a lady came back to Jenkins and saw the school and basically wept. Who
Yes.
would that lady be?
That's correct. That's wonderful, wonderful Rosemary Shook, who
Bless her heart.
is one of the founding members of our committee, along with Pelma Dixon, and then her son Charles Dixon, who's also a teacher at the school. When she came back, they had been gone away for several years working, and when they came back to the city of Jenkins, their hometown, when they came first through the main street, and she looked up and saw the condition of the old school, she started crying because she loved the old school so much. It was where she got her education. It was where she met her future husband. So many things were tied in, the memories from that old school. And to see it in the state of disrepair that it was in just broke her heart. And so she was basically the driving force who really started getting people together and trying to figure out how they're going to be able to save this old building.
Okay, so we're to the point now that a committee's going to be made. We're wanting to save the school. What are some of the main things that need to be done to save the school at this point?
Okay, now once the committee was created, the main thing, of course, first of all, was the roof. Because if you don't stop the water from coming into the building, then obviously whatever you do on the inside is just a waste of money and time. And so the first thing they needed to do was repair the roof. It cost a lot of money, obviously, to redo the entire roof, because not only do you have to put a new surface on, but we had to rebuild basically 2/3 of the roof because of rotting from the water damage. And so, you know, the structural work underneath had to be repaired and restored before you could actually put the roof on.
Well, I heard a story, and I'll see if you can confirm or deny this, that there was a gentleman in Jenkins named C.V. Snap, and I could remember him when he was 90 years old, still driving around Jenkins.
Oh, yeah.
I heard a tale that he was actually on top of that school with a tar bucket at one point trying to repair the roof. Is that true or is that false?
Well, now personally, I can't say absolutely that it is true, although that we were told by several people that they actually saw him up there.
Well, now, are these people we can depend upon?
Well, they're people that normally I would believe,
would
and so
believe, okay.
and knowing C.V. Snap just from his history and the short time that I knew him, I can imagine him doing that because he loved the old school. You know, he was the superintendent of schools for, I'm not really sure exactly how many years, but he was there
decades, yeah,
almost as long as the school was, and he worked with a lot of people. My grandmother was his secretary for several years, and she just almost worshipped the man. She thought he was just the most wonderful educator and the most wonderful administrator. And he was, because he did a lot of things and to really, really improve the school system in Jenkins.
You get the roof repaired. What's next?
Once the roof is repaired, then we need to work on the drainage, because the basement always had water in it. Even from talking to students who went there back in the 40s and 50s, they said they can still remember when it rained hard still being water in spots in the basement, pools of water, where the drainage from the streams that come under the school had caused water to come up through the basement. And so we had to set out setting up a drainage system. We installed several sump pumps in the basement, and then we set a drainage system on the outside of the school to pull the water actually away from the foundation. It goes around and then down into the city drainage system, to go into the streams and everything like that. And so that took a lot of time and a lot of money. Of course, everything takes money nowadays.
Well, you're talking about a structure that's how many square feet? I mean,
it's a little over 40,000 square feet.
That's huge.
Yeah, it's by far the largest building, in the city of Jenkins. And so with that 40,000 square feet and trying to get that drainage set, it took a lot of effort. But we got it done now. Even with the recent heavy rains that we had, we didn't have any problem with flooding anywhere in the basement. It's very dry.
And of course, that's going to lead to another problem you'll talk about a little bit later, the mold. But you've got your roof, you've got your drainage. Now where are you going? What are you looking at on the building? What's next?
Then of course the windows kind of go along with the roof as far as keeping the weather out, and in keeping the critters out as well, because when they first started looking in the early 90s, when they were surveying the school and going through, there was no electricity in the school, and there was all kinds of little critters running around in the basement, and you could hear them and you could feel them around, but you couldn't see them. And so it was really a spooky thing. I talked to one of our architects, and he said that he did a lot of praying and actually became a very religious man trying to do the basement, trying to go through there and survey it all out so that he could draw a new set of blueprints.
But Jim, before we talk about the windows, I kind of got ahead of myself on one thing. Now, before the school actually had anything done to the roof or anything like that, I was told that y'all had to decide if the building was basically worth saving at this state or not.
That's correct.
And, I mean, obviously you all found that it was, but tell us a little bit about that, how that was determined.
Well, see, that one thing, and it's kind of a popular misconception, if I could just touch on that a little bit, is that the Jenkins School, the old Jenkins School, belongs to the city of Jenkins, which it doesn't. It was purchased in the late 70s by the Letcher County Fiscal Court. And so they became the owners and caretakers of the building.
So the building really belongs to the people of Letcher County.
Absolutely.
Not just the few citizens there in Jenkins.
No, that's correct.
Okay.
It belongs to all the citizens of Letcher County.
Okay.
And the only reason we call it the old Jenkins High School is because it's sitting smack dab in the middle of Jenkins. But it does belong to all of Letcher County, even to this day. We have to go to the fiscal court meetings and report on our progress or lack of sometimes progress, which that's the way it goes sometimes when you're waiting for governmental funding.
Yeah.
But at first we had to, the county had to decide whether this building was a liability or an asset. Was it worth putting any money into? Was it worth putting any effort into, or would it be better to just tear the building down? Unfortunately, personally, I think that we've torn way too many of these old buildings down. And I realize it's more expensive to renovate and refurbish these old buildings to make them viable for today, but I think it's worth the effort because we don't want to let go of our history. But they had to bring in a company to go through, the engineering company had to go through, check for the soundness of the structure, make sure that the walls weren't going to fall in, make sure that the basic things were going to be in place for us to be able to renovate the building. And so, of course, that took quite a bit of time. It took a long time and a lot of effort for them to just go through every square inch and just make sure everything was going to be structurally sound. And they found that it was, although there was a lot of damage to the roof and damage to the floor surfaces and things like that, the actual structure and the framework was still sound.
Very sound from what I understand.
Yeah, they said, a matter of fact, one of the engineers said that you couldn't blow the school off the foundation with dynamite, that it was so, and possibly they said one of the strongest structures in the area, whether it was new or old, and so we were thrilled to hear that, of course, because that meant we could go ahead with restoration.
Well, were you thrilled to hear about the price of what a window would cost for the school?
No, definitely not. I mean, you don't think about the expenses per window like that. But, you can't go back and put single pane windows into this building if you're going to use it. If it's going to be restored and renovated, then it has to be done according to government standards. And government standards say that you have to use at least a double or triple pane window for energy efficiency. And we found out that it was going to cost us I think the actual figure, I can't tell you exactly, but it was around $2,000 per window.
For one window?
For one window.
$2,000.
Right.
Well, this school didn't have very many windows, I suppose.
Oh, goodness, just a few, a little over 200.
200 windows at $2,000.
Yeah.
That's $200,000 for your windows,
Well,
right?
we got a break on the price because we ordered so many, obviously. So it was around $250,000 for all the windows.
My goodness gracious.
And so $250,000 just to put windows in the building. But the windows are 8 feet by 3 feet. So, they're pretty good sized windows. It's not your normal house size window. So it had to be all special made because nobody uses windows that size anymore. So that added to the expense as well. But we got it done.
So you've determined the building's worth saving. You've got the roof on it. You've worked on the drainage. You've got some windows in. I was not familiar with what Cornish was.
Yeah.
Could you explain possibly what Cornish is and the work that was done? It looks to me it's just almost a cosmetic thing.
Well, it is to a certain extent, and this is something that I've learned from being involved with the committee. The Cornish work, if you go and see the building, you'll notice the white that comes around the top. It's like 3 feet down from the very top of the building, and it's a trim that comes all the way around the building.
And it
You'll
sort
see
of sticks out.
Yeah,
like
it comes out. It'll come out about a foot, maybe a foot and a half in some spots, and it looks really nice. They replaced all of that because it was crumbling. Half of it had fallen down on the ground,
It looked pathetic.
and so I've got some old pictures of what it looked like before any renovation was done, and I mean it's just really sad. But not only does it look nice, but it has a secondary purpose, and that purpose is that it deflects water away from the sides of the building and away from the windows. So when it rains really hard, instead of the water just flowing straight down the side, it actually kicks out and drips off on the side, which protects the brick and protects the mortar, which is something that they thought of, years and years ago. It was standard practice when the school building was first built to do that type of thing, to preserve the mortar and to preserve the bricks, to keep some of the weather off of the building.
So it looks pretty, and it does have a function.
Yeah, it does have
also.
a function. And
Okay, well, now, at this point in time, the school's starting to look really good from the outside. One of the things that didn't look good from the outside was the fence in the front.
Right.
Did you all have to just repair that, or did you replace it, or what? How did you handle that?
Well,
'Cause
that
it looks
was-
really nice now, too.
Thank you. We think it turned out really well. That was another can of worms that we unfortunately opened when we said, well, we're going to replace the fence. We found it was in such bad shape we couldn't just repair it. So we thought, well, we're just going to hire a company to replace it. But then we found out that federal standards state the old fence was 2 feet tall. You can't put a 2 foot tall fence around a structure that's going to be used for public use anymore. The fence has to be at least 3 feet in height. So, and you add, that doesn't sound like much, but when you add a foot to every rung of an iron fence, that adds up to a lot of feet. And so we had to take the old fence down and had to have a completely new fence constructed. And it couldn't be exactly like the old fence was because the old fence had the old spikes, little like arrow tips. And that's another thing, that if it's 3 feet tall, then you can't put those on the top of the fence because there's a hazard that somebody could fall on them or something.
Yeah.
And so it had to be just squared off or rounded off the tops of the fences. So the fence had to be totally redesigned, but it had to be reminiscent to the old design. And so we had to have a group come in, an architect design the fence on paper, and then submit it to an ironworks where they could see if they could make it at that design and make sure that it passed federal and state standards. And then once everything was okayed by everyone, then we got the fence installed. But of course you have to pay the architect to draw, and you have to pay to have it inspected and all that other stuff, so it added to the expense.
Well,
Again.
you're talking about pay, and you've talked about all the work that's been done, but you've not mentioned to me where in the world is the money coming from?
Oh, well, that's an ongoing process, of course.
Okay.
Now, we started out, we were very fortunate that when Paul Patton was governor, this was one of his projects that he felt was very important, along with doing the craft school in the city of Hyman. He felt like this was something that needed to be done. So he himself set aside $1.5 million of the state's budget 1 year to go directly to the old high school renovation. Now, it went to the Letcher County Fiscal Court, and so whenever we have a project, we have to go to the court and present the project that needs to be done, and then they okay spending the money, and then the money would come out to pay for the work. But that's where the first $1.5 million came from, was from the Patton administration.
Okay.
Now that money, we are using the last of that money right now.
Okay, so how much have you spent roughly on the building so far?
So far, we've spent $1.1 million.
$1.1 million.
Yeah, and if you take we've had a little bit. We got some money from the Tourism Board, the State of Kentucky Tourism Bureau, gave us some money, and we've gotten some donations from former students, which is what we do as our organization. We kind of try to fundraise to help with the renovation, and so altogether we've spent about $1.2 million. But 1.1 is from the money that came directly from the state of Kentucky for the renovation.
Okay, we've talked a lot about the outside of it, and we do have some film of the school that our friend Lynn will be putting on at his leisure. But it looks really, really good now. When you drive by the nice, pretty windows, the cornice done, the new fence, the keeping the grass cut, it looks, just like the old days. Can you tell me what the inside is like right now?
Well, right now, 98% of the inside is in really bad shape. We do have one room, which is the room we call 212. It's the old classroom 212 that we are redoing. It's almost completed. New walls, new wood floor, and this is the room that we decided to put a handicap ramp for an entrance to the school building from the back. Federal and state standards state that we have to have so many handicap accesses, and each floor has to be accessible by somebody in a wheelchair. And so we're gladly going along with those regulations, but we decided that room 212 would be the perfect place to put this handicap ramp. So we've installed a ramp there, a new door in the back and a ramp that comes in so you can enter into the school there on that level. That building is, that room, is about halfway complete right now. Currently we're taking bids to put public restrooms in that classroom, as well as finish with all the heating and air conditioning and the sprinkler system and all that stuff, not only for that room but for all the other floors. But we're working on that right now. So that will be the first fully restored room. Now we do have the Letcher County Senior Citizen Center, has the Jenkins branch of that, does have a couple of old classrooms that they are using that have already been restored to a certain extent.
And they're the only people that's actually using the
building? They're the only ones that are actually using a building at this time.
The senior citizens, okay.
And I'd like to give them a little bit of a recognition, because they built a building that they were going to use for the Jenkins Head Start and for the Jenkins Senior Citizen Center. And it is in Dairy Hollow in Jenkins, which is not in downtown, such as this is. And it was a nice facility, but the senior citizens said, no, we don't want to move. They liked the old school building. They liked the fact that it was in the center of downtown, so it was easy to get to so it's a walking distance from several senior citizens that utilized the meeting areas, and that they eat the meals there every day. And so they refused to leave. And they've actually been credited by a couple of people as being the ones to actually save the building, because when it was time to move out and then they thought they could maybe demolish it or whatever, they said, no, we're not leaving. And they stayed there. And so that really gave people a chance to think, and they felt like that it was worth saving. So,
well, you've got the one tenants, we'll call them, the senior citizens. You have another room that's about completed. How much more money will it take to complete the building, and what are the goals? What are you completing the building for? What's the purpose of restoring this building?
Right now, the estimates are $3 to $4 million. And I know that's a broad estimate, but because construction costs fluctuate so much, we can't just pinpoint and say it's going to take $2.8 million or something, because by the time we get working on it, prices could have even doubled, And so we say usually $3 to $4 million would be a good finishing point.
Okay.
We would be able, the estimate was that it would take $5 million to completely renovate the school. And of course, now that we are using the last of the money that we have now, we're looking for different types of funding. We apply for different grants and all these things,
Let's say that you had your $5 million or $6 million. Say you had all the money, you had everything done. then what? I mean, what are you going to do with the school?
Well, first of all, the Jenkins School Board wants to move their offices right back into the building.
That'd be wonderful.
Now, they want to get back to the old building. When the fiscal court purchased the building back in the late 70s, part of the agreement in the purchasing agreement was that the Jenkins School Board could have a free 99-year lease on offices in the future if they chose to use the building, if it was ever renovated or if they ever did anything with it. And even though it was in the late 70s, they still have about 70 years left on that lease.
So it'd be well worth the
it would be
money
worth it
to get them in there.
Well, not only does it save the school board money, but it saves the county money, because right now the Letcher County is helping the Jenkins School Board with their expenses, where they're renting this other building. And so it would actually save the county money as well. So, all the way around, it's a win-win situation. The city of Jenkins is talking about they'd like to put some of their city offices in one end of the building, because it's the city hall in Jenkins, it's kind of a small building.
Let me interrupt you. We're really short on time.
Okay.
Give me just, we have 1 minute left. Tell me very quickly some of the other things you'd like to see in there.
The University of Kentucky would like to put in a geology museum. Southeast is wanting to put some classrooms over there to do some adult education, so that everybody won't have to travel to Whitesburg. It'd be to have some satellite campuses over there. We also have several different businesses that would like to rent retail space, either for a store or for offices for their business. And so we have a long list of people who would like to use it. We just have to get it finished before we can open it up.
Well, I'll tell you, I really appreciate the information you've been able to give us, Jim. We do absolutely want to get you back on here when some more stuff's happening.
Okay, be glad to come
again,
back.
Thank you so much for being on Meet the People.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me here.
Okay. We'll be back in just a moment.